Need to get us to full screen.
Okay, I'm gonna start everything, and whatever you want to talk about, we can talk about.
Okay, give me one quick second here. How do I go full screen? Okay, guess we'll go there. I'm about to start my camera. So we're live, right?
Yeah, we're live.
Excellent, 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 excellent. You sending me right back?
Yeah.
I gotta love technology.
Yeah, it's something else.
So I apologize. I definitely apologize for this. Ah, another battery filling. So, how you
Okay.
doing today? Now we're finally getting to talk today.
All right, I'm good.
All right, same here, same here, same here. I want to talk about your career. This is actually recording here, isn't
Yeah,
it? Okay.
it's recording here. It's also recording to YouTube. So
Oh, it is.
yeah,
Oh, awesome. Okay, my screen just froze. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, my screen just froze. Give me one second. Hmm. Well, I guess if this is recording YouTube, I can actually get this off of YouTube. Will this be on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, it'll be on my YouTube channel.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I might as well get started then.
All right.
All right, all right. First, I want to thank you for coming on to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
All right, awesome, awesome, awesome. I guess before we begin, I usually start at the beginning, but I actually really want because I did heavy research on
Okay.
you. I saw a lot of titles. How many titles do you exactly have?
I'm thinking it's about 72, 73 at this point. That's about it. About 72, 73 right now, and I'm getting ready to put out up to next year will be like 75 or so.
Wow, wow. And how long have you been writing?
I have been writing ever since I was 9 years old, but I started writing professionally when I was in my 20s. So I've been writing for a good 25 years right about now.
Oh, see, that's just totally awesome. Now, I want to set you back before we get into it. Would go get into your titles. You have a lot of have a lot of fun titles. I need to rewind a bit
All
because
right.
every story has a beginning. You're a sci-fi guy, so you got to have an origin story. How old were you when you first started writing?
I started writing when I was 9 years old. My brother had all these comics in his comic collection, and I wanted to make comic books. Unfortunately, I couldn't draw very well, so I came up with the idea that I could make words into the pictures, and that's how I started writing.
Okay. And we'll see. And what put you on the road to publishing your first book?
It was something I always wanted to do ever since I was 9 years old. I've always wanted to publish a book, and I tried to go through the traditional trade publishing route. Unfortunately, I couldn't go through that route. I had to wind up going through the print on demand route, but then I saw that I was having limitations with print on demand companies, and I liked working with Virtual Bookworm. They did a great job on my first two books, but when I saw what I needed to do, I wanted to have more control over my format and creative process, so I started my own imprint, SJS Direct, out in 2009. So that's when I started publishing my own stuff.
Awesome, awesome. Now, my biggest thing is because see, there's a transition between writing for others and starting your own imprint. They gave you more creative control. So, so that means you're in control of everything.
Yes, I practically control the overall publishing process, but I do hire independent artists to design my covers. Like this cover for ISIS, the main event. This is I usually hire out to an artist named Bill Walko who does the ISIS and East Team series covers,
Right.
and I often hire Mike Williams to do covers for the John Haynes series. So I oftentimes hire artists to do covers for me, And that's usually what it is. I do the writing, I usually do the editing, the page layouts, and I'll do the cover concept design, and then I'll send that out to an artist. And then after that, I put together the entire finished book, and I usually order one of these so that I can look it over. And after I look it over, I then get it ready for release. I also do the marketing and promotion, so I do a lot of different jobs.
Awesome, awesome. Now, the biggest now before I get into your Isis and John Haynes series, I want to get into it in detail. What was your very first book?
Well, my very first book, you mean the one that I wrote or the one that I published?
One that you published?
Well, the very first book I published was, it's inside of this. It was the first ISIS I published back in 2002. I only had like $600 left off an AmeriCorps job that I had worked, and I wanted to get a book published before I turned 30 years old. So I took 200 of the $600 I had, gave it to Virtual Bookworm, and they put together the first ISIS for me. So that was the first book I ever published.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now I want to get into your Isis and your John Haynes character. First, the Isis series. Tell me a little bit about that. What was the concept and what inspired you to start the series?
Well, the ISIS character came out of a conversation my family was having at the dinner table around 1998 or 1999. We were sitting there talking about comic books and superheroes, and my sister said to me, they don't make many black female superheroes. So that was one of the things that inspired me. And then one night I had a dream about a goddess named Isis, and I put those two together and I said, here's a way I can make a black female superhero. And I wanted to make something that was positive for young black girls. I wanted to make a positive black heroine for young black girls. And that came out of me trying to make this story about this daughter of Osiris who was Nubian, and she was from Nubia. And then she came to America. She was an immortal, so she came to America. And I wanted to use that as a way to teach not only about Egyptian mythology and Nubian mythology, because Nubia is Egypt's sister nation, but also to teach about African American history and also give black girls that positive heroine while being able to talk about the mythology, the history, and also, talking about how to be a great hero. And then that's what I did in 2002, but then I later elaborated on it and came up with this whole concept of a goddess next door because I had written a blog talking about my proposed ideas for a run of Wonder Woman comics. And I said to myself, why should I give DC Comics my best ideas, or why should I write some fan fiction that has no value when I have created my own character and I can tell my own stories, and I would own all the rights to those stories and I'd be able to make money on those stories, and I'd be able to create that positive heroine I talked about almost about 15 years ago. So in 2012, the 10th anniversary of the ISIS series, the ISIS book, this book came out in 2002, but in 2012, I did a update on the ISIS character after I published John Haynes, and I wanted to show what she was doing at the time with Amari's Revenge. It's in a box somewhere, but I did that in 2012, and that's how I started the ISIS series. I originally planned to do it in 2003, but I could never find that job that would enable me to pay for publishing other books. But in 2012, I was ready to start the ISIS series, and that's when I've been doing it ever since.
Okay. I want to stop you for a second because you actually bring up a good point. Actually, a couple of good points that I want to hit. First, you talk about our history. You talk about you wanted to create something out of our mythology to create a character, and and actually you created a very good character. So in other words, in other words, my question is, has it been well received by us, especially African American females?
Well, what I wanted to do was create a character that showed the positive traits of black girls and black women, because I didn't believe that the mainstream media was giving us a positive picture of black girls and black women. And we oftentimes marginalize, the images of black beauty, black empowerment, and things like that. We really don't really showcase those things. So with the ISIS character, I wanted to go out here and create that positive black heroine, and I wanted to showcase what was beautiful about black girls, and what made them goddesses was their internal things as related to the character. That's one of the things I like to focus on when I'm doing the Isis character is what makes her a hero is who she is on the inside and the things that she does to help other people because she's usually dedicates herself to service and serving others. And that's what her main that's what the goddess next door is all about. She's a girl next door, which is something we don't see in Black culture anymore. I mean, we used to see it in the 80s and in the 90s with the sitcoms like The Cosby Show with Denise Huxtable, Vanessa Huxtable, Laura Winslow from Family Matters. We don't see girls next door anymore. So I wanted to create this whole concept of a girl next door who goes out and helps like she's needed, something similar to what they do with DC's Supergirl or Wonder Girls. So I wanted to give that type of heroine for little Black girls to have so that people can see the Black girl next door helping out and being a hero. So that's what I wanted to do with the Isis character was give Black girls that kind of heroine so that they could see they're girls next door and they serve their community and they want to help out too.
Okay. Now, you mentioned not giving your stuff away to DC Comics and everything. Like you younger, I wanted to do a comic book myself, but couldn't draw. But then I researched the comic book industry, and like you said, you create a character for one of the big two. You create, you write for them. You're basically their wage slave. Like,
Yeah.
whatever you create is basically theirs. Nothing is yours. So I quickly moved away from that. And then later down the line, I learned about what DC Comics did to Milestone,
Yeah.
and I definitely backed away. So kudos to you for starting your own imprint, your own brand, your own characters. Because from what I see, Isis is loved, John Haynes is loved, but the whole girl next door concept.
Yeah.
I mean, in this world of females being degraded, females being the side chick, the gang members girl, all that. Kudos to you.
Thank you. I wanted to really give Black girls that positive image because I saw what was coming down the pipe with Monstrous Ball in 2001. And I said, I have to really start focusing on developing this because we really need counter programming to stuff like Monstrous Ball and all the stuff we've seen that go on over the last couple of years. I mean, the Black woman's image has practically been run down the sewer, and we need counter programming. And it's always been Black men who have gone out here to elevate the Black woman's image and give her a positive picture. So it's important for us to have characters like Isis and Eastine, her sister, who has her own series as well, so that Black girls can see a positive picture of what a Black girl looks like and how Black girls live and serve in the community.
Right. So, like I said, kudos to you. Now, how many ISIS books do you have?
I have about 15 or 16. I would have to. I mean, it's a lot of ISIS series books. I mean, they're all in a box. So, but let me see if I can go get them for a second.
All right. Take your time. I have a couple more ISIS questions for you.
Okay. Do I have them all? No, I don't have them all. Okay. But there are. Oh, there's a lot of them.
Take your time. You're good.
Yeah, but some of them are buried deep in a box.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Because I have all my books with me. Okay. And I have done. Okay. this is just a most of them. So I got to put them in order. So there's a lot of them. But the first, still there? All right.
Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, good, good,
But
good.
the first ISIS book is Amari's Revenge. And I wrote this one to reintroduce the ISIS character to readers. And it's the story where ISIS deals with a evil queen of Nubia. So that's
Okay.
the first ISIS series book. And it reintroduces the character, reestablishes her into the what I call the SJS Direct universe. Before, because the SJS Direct universe started with the temptation of John Haynes. And after this story, I wanted to see where ISIS was. So I created ISIS Amari's Revenge to be the first book. So this is the first book. And then we have, what is it, the Ultimate Fight, where she takes on, not that's the wrong one. That's another one. That's the old edition of another book. The Ultimate Fight, where she takes on the Greek goddess Nemesis. In an Ultimate Fight, I got inspired by UFC to make this one. And from there, I started, and that was the one that started most of the story arcs. So after that, I created the Beauty Myth. This was the new edition of Beauty Myth, which has a cover by Musi Nkosi from South Africa. He did the cover for this one. And this is one where she takes on this black cosmetic creator who wants to find out the secret to her immortality. And this one sets up a lot of major storylines in the ISIS series. And this one is one of the most essential books because it talks about black beauty, black self-image, and black self-worth. And it really shows that even though ISIS is a goddess, she still struggles with a lot of things black girls struggle with as related to those feelings of insecurity and inadequacy regarding her own beauty. And that's something a lot of black girls deal with. So I wanted to do it in this story. And then we have Isis, My Sister, My Frenemy, which comes out of the Beauty Myth and Amari's Revenge and deals with Isis's relationship with her sister Eastine and the problems they're having with each other because they used to be arch enemies, but they started working together. And this is a storyline where a lot of the stories that started in the first three books come to a head. And Isis has to finally start realizing she has to start trusting her sister. So this is My Sister, My Frenemy. This is a fun one. A lot of people like this one. And after that, we have Isis, All About the Goddess, which is a mystery story, which features a guest character, Marilyn Marie, and she's trying to help her stop a campus stalker. This one is very popular with readers. It takes us into the world of college and art modeling and this mystery, and people, they really like this one. And this one was one of the harder ones for me to write because it was a mystery story. And after that, we have the first cover by Bill Walko, which is Isis, Wrath of the Cyber Goddess, which comes out of Isis, the Beauty Myth, is actually the second story that falls behind the Beauty Myth, where Isis takes on the evil cosmetic owner who has turned herself into a digital diva, and this is a big action story. So this is a big major one. And after that book, we have, I believe, it was Power of the Princess, which is a follow-up to Ultimate Fight. Yeah, I got to do this cover over, but this is a follow-up where she takes on Nemesis once again, her Greek counterpart. And after that, we have the Night of the Vampires, which is where Isis takes on vampires. And this introduces another major character to the SJS Direct universe who's going to be featured in a new book coming up called Eternal Night, Lilith Graves. And this is one where Isis teams up with John Haynes to take on vampires.
Crossovers. I love crossovers.
Yeah, this is his story arc actually started in Wrath of the Cyber Goddess. This is the first book where John Haynes appears in the ISIS series, and he makes his return after the temptation of John Haynes after a several-year hiatus of me not using that character. He finally makes his comeback in this book. So this is another one people would want to pick up, and it's followed by, again, let me see if I've got it, Power of the Princess, which is a little short reprieve. And then we go into Night of the Vampires, and the most popular book in the Ice. No, it's this one, Samurai Goddess, that comes after that because I didn't have things ready for that book yet. But Samurai Goddess is where she takes on kung fu killers, and this is one where I introduce another storyline that's tied to the whole Cyber Goddess arc and the epilogue. But this one is one where Isis. Oh, actually, I got it out of order. It's supposed to be the Bride of Dracula. That's the Bride of Dracula. This is the one everybody loves. It's just incredibly popular. People love this story out of all of them. And this is another one where John Haynes and Isis team up, and they're taking on the boss, who is Count Dracula. And this is one that's filled with action. It's a lot of fun. And then after that, again, it's Samurai Goddess. And then we have the House of Isis, where I was making a commentary about pro-blacks and back to Africa types, because a lot of them would attack me about the Isis character's skin tone. And I wanted to show what made her black was inside of her and the content of her character, not the color of her skin in this story. And I wanted to make a commentary about it. And I couldn't get this one out in time because I didn't have enough money to pay Bill to do a cover. So I want to refresh this cover one day, but a lot of people like this one, but I want to do it all over again. But this one is before the next story arc, which I had to do. Well, I did, which was the one that was supposed to come out. Well, this one I had to put this one out earlier, but the one that was supposed to come out, I finally got the money for the cover, and I had Bill to design Escape from Transylvania, which is the third part of the vampire arc, which was Isis, Night of the Vampires, Isis, Bride of Dracula, and Escape from Transylvania. And all three of those make up the vampire arc. And after I did the vampire arc in, I think, 2018, I finally got to do my fantasy flashback fall, which was a crossover between your Isis Imitation of Life, where we went back to the Goddess Next Door's days in Jim Crow and how she helps a girl overcome racism during Jim Crow. And this book was part of what I called a fantasy flashback fall, that was supposed to coincide with Easting the Sands of Time. Now, Easting the Sands of Time was supposed to be Easting in ancient Egypt in a time travel story with the teenage John Haynes, whereas Isis was focusing on the Jim Crow period. And this cover was done by Drew Swift, who came in, and when there was some issue, when one of my artists, he had gotten an illness and he couldn't do the work, so I brought Drew Swift in. He's a great black artist out of Texas, and he put a great manga look on my concept, and it really pops. People love it, but people love the story even more because it's really takes us back to Jim Crow and shows us that the heroes back then, they weren't super powered. They were our teachers, our doctors, our lawyers, all of those educated black professionals who laid the foundation for the civil rights movement to walk on. And that's what I was trying to do with this story, show us how those people were heroes back then fighting Jim Crow, with the little things that they did that had a great impact. And after I did the fantasy flashback fall, I went back to doing the Isis series and started with All That Glitters, which was more a homage on superheroes. And it was a basic bank robber story, and I wanted to show how easy it was to do a bank robber story in comics. So I did this one to show how easy it was. And the most recent book is Isis, the Main Event, where the Goddess Next Door steps in the squirreled circle and takes on the beast from the bow. So I'm getting ready to wrap up that second story arc in the Isis series. I'm about 15 books in, and I'm about to get ready to wrap up the second story arc. I'm working on Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess, which is the third or the fourth book in the Cyber Goddess arc. And after that, I'm pondering doing one more book to complete the arc, which is dealing with the Imitation of Life story and the sorority Isis is in, the Thetas. So we're about 16, 17 books in on the Isis series, and I'm getting ready to probably do some more work to start plans on the third story arc.
Are you sure you're not secretly lurking for DC Comics? Because the way you just weave the stories in, and you sure you're not secretly, because pretty much so the way you weave the stories in, how you bring in John Haynes, how you get this story arc, how you get that story arc, you have it all down.
Well, I read a lot of comics as a kid, and I learned a lot about writing from reading different comics, and I also learned techniques from screenplays and um, learning how to work different novels. But I've read comics for over 30 years, so I know how to get the story arcs running. I know how to do the character transformation arcs, and I learned how to do that, and that's how I can do these serialized stories one after the other. I originally, again, I aspired to be a comic book writer when I was 16, but I couldn't find the door to the industry, so I decided to take my skills and use them for myself and use them in these novelettes towards giving the reader that same type of story experience.
Awesome, awesome. Now I want to go into John Haynes. Who is John Haynes? Tell me more about John Haynes.
Well, the John Haynes character is a character I based partially on myself, and I created the John Haynes character to give black boys a positive image of a black man and show them a image of a positive, responsible black man. And his story is one that parts of it came from the original story, Temptation of John Haynes, came from my mother. My mother told me the devil didn't like me, and I said I was going to give the devil the ultimate middle finger by writing a story about a guy who was tempted by him and given all of this power, but his greatest power is his power over himself and his relationship with the living God. Now, the devil sends this demon Eastine to go out here and try to tempt him and seduce him and compromise him. And this whole story is about his example of Christ and how it transforms the life of Eastine, and it also shows how he can beat the devil in this story. So that's the first story that I wrote when I started getting serious about the character again, because I created the character way back in 1990, and I just couldn't get that character to work. So he sat on a shelf for, what is it, a good 15, 16 years, 1990 to 2005. Because in 2005, I decided to bring the character back because I had this temptation arc I wanted to do. So I wound up bringing him back in 2005, and I started the Temptation of John Haynes. And that's where I got the whole idea of the John Haynes versus the devil, and this guy being tempted by the devil and being made into this false god who would wind up having all of this power on the outside. And the whole thing is the devil was trying to make him compromise his beliefs and his ideals. But what makes him a hero is that he won't betray the things that he believes in, and that's what leads to the struggle between him and the devil. Now, after I did Temptation of John Haynes, I sat on it for several years because this book didn't come out until 2011. This book didn't come. I tried to submit it to different publishers and literary agents, and they all hated it. And in fact, most of the people, they hated the cover. I'm getting ready to do something with this cover, but they loved the story, and I wanted to. People asked me to bring the character back, but I couldn't bring the character back because I didn't have a story just yet. I mean, I started part of The Man Who Rules the World back in about 2012 or so, but it just didn't come together. I originally was going to use the villain from Man with Nothing to Lose as the villain, but when my mother got sick, I got inspired and I wrote the whole Man Who Rules the World in about a week. And in this story, John Haynes takes on god Cassius, one of these malevolent despots. He's from an ancient African kingdom. The devil brings him back to life and sends him to go try to take over the world, and John has to stop him. And that's where that whole idea of Man Who Rules the World comes from, because Lucifer has it on Time magazine that John Haynes is the man who rules the world. It's a joke to mock him, but it became the title and the statement for the character. And it was about really God ruling the world, but his servants going out here and doing the work to stop the devil's agents like your god Cassius. This is a lot of this one features almost all the characters in the SJS universe. It features Isis, Eastine, and many of the other characters. And this is like a big comic book event type story. So with this one, I wanted to give it big action. It's like if you watch the movies Avengers or Avengers Endgame, that's what this one is a lot like. And people who read it really enjoy it. So this I wasn't going to do much with the John Haynes character after this because his stories are very, very hard to write. But Mike Williams, the artist who does my covers, we were sitting there talking on Twitter, and he talked to me, said, we don't have that many positive images of black men out here, especially heterosexual, masculine black men. And I was sitting there talking to him on Twitter, and he was talking to me about John Haynes, and he said, you should do something with John Haynes. And I said, yeah, I should do something with John Haynes. And I decided to, test the waters with the John Haynes character. And that's when I did John Haynes, A Conversation with Death. It takes place right after Man Who Rules the World. And let's see if I can get it on camera. It takes place right after it. And it's the entry point to the John Haynes series. And this book was a blockbuster when it came out. I mean, people, they loved this book when I put it out. It's only like, what is it, 28 pages? And people were telling me, they were comparing it to John Constantine. They were saying it was like it was like one of the best things they've ever read. I mean, I was getting a lot of real positive feedback on it. And I always believed that if DC Comics were to have picked this up, it probably would have been a huge hit. But people love this book. It got a lot of 5-star reviews. And it's the thing that encouraged me to continue doing the John Haynes series. Usually I just do a teaser book like an Amari's Revenge or East You No Good Deed. And if it gets good feedback, I'll do more. And after I did this one, I got so much good feedback, I got the incentive to pick up on things with John Haynes' Dark Succubus. And John Haynes' Dark Succubus did twice as good as John Haynes' A Conversation with Death as related to the reviews. People really loved this story. And it was a big hit with a lot of readers out there. So that encouraged me to continue going on with the John Haynes series. Dark Succubus, I mean, a lot of positive reviews. People who have read it loved it. And Mike came back and did another amazing job on this cover where John is, tempted by this sultry succubus. And we really get some more insight into the John Haynes character and his dark, mysterious world. Now, after the Dark Succubus, I did John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, which featured the Block, the original villain for Man Who Rules the World. That was the original villain. He comes in the first chapter of Man Who Rules the World. But this story picks up on that first chapter and shows us the Block in jail. And Lucifer comes to him, gives him these powers, and then sends him after John Haynes. And with this one, I wanted to make a commentary on how followers of Christ have nothing to lose, because when they believe in the Most High, they will always gain the victory. So your Block on one side believes he has nothing to lose because he's lost his criminal empire, but the John Haynes character has nothing to lose because he's following the living God. So with this one, I really want to do something special because this one coincided with the 10th anniversary of the SJS Direct imprint, and I decided to hire Josh Howard to do a variant cover. So there's 2 covers for this book, and they're 2 different ISBNs, but they're 2 different versions. There's Josh's version, and there's Mike's version, and you can get both of these on Amazon.com. I'm also, that's mostly what the John Haynes series is so far. I've got a 4th book I just finished, Taking Care of Business, and that one deals with John working at Morris Phillips, and it deals with my plans for the series for John and his as CEO of Morris Phillips. So I have that one planned, and I have a 5th one planned where Death is going to come back. So I know how to do these story arcs and things because I learned from comic books, and I wanted to make it just like a comic series so that if you buy the one book, you want to go back and buy the others. That was always part of the sales model, was once you buy an ISIS book or a John Haynes book, you always want to come back and pick up the other back books. And that's yeah, it's just like Marvel Comics and DC Comics out here. I use the same type of story models and platforms, and I do it for many of my other books too. Like I also did it for these 3 books, which are the Spinsterella trilogy, Spellbound, Legendary Mad Matilda, and Spinsterella. So I use that model for many of my books, and I use it for many of them because that's how books are sold. The book in your reader's hand sells the other books, and when they go back for the old other titles.
See, when I set up this interview and I kept trying to set up the interview, I knew I was going to get something, but I didn't know I was going to get this much. And so you got to tell me now, where can we buy your books?
Well, you can get my books on Amazon.com. All of my books are available on my page, and you can get them in paperback and Kindle format.
Awesome. How can we get to know you? Do you have a website, your Facebook page? How can we get to know you?
You can get to know me through my YouTube, which is my Sean James channel, which I always post videos on. So I have my YouTube channel, and you can.
Okay. All right. So now my next question for you is, I need you. Do you have any advice for anyone? Because like you, I started out like that. And I'm still working on my characters as far as my comic books are concerned. But do you have any advice for anyone who's trying to get to where you are now, who's having the same difficulty?
Well, I'm still trying to get to that place where I can, be working for someplace. But the whole thing is you have to really persevere. You have to keep pushing, and the whole thing is you are. I when I go out here, I didn't write all of these characters overnight. I mean, this is over 20 years of work that you see right here. With all these books. If I pulled them all up, I mean, just the ISIS series alone is over 20 years worth of work. I mean, I've been working on this since 98, 99, and you have to really have a lot of discipline to write these kind of stories. You have to have a lot of resolve, and you have to persevere because everybody's first story is not going to be that great. I mean, the first ISIS I wrote in 2002 was not that great, but I still managed to hang in there. You're going to run into a lot of detractors who are going to tell you that your work's not good enough, but you have to believe in your work. You have to believe in what you're writing. You have to believe in it, and you have to commit to it because you're the only person who can get that character out there. And you also have to be able to have a thick skin because you're going to have to deal with a lot of people who, while some people may not like your work, others are going to give you constructive criticism, and you have to be able to take that constructive criticism and find something good in it that you can use for later on, because sometimes people will give you things that will help you to write better stories, develop better characters, and you have to be open to taking constructive criticism from people when you're out here. But you have to really hang in there. This is a really hard fought business. I mean, it's not for those who have thin skin. It's not something that you're going to be able to do overnight because it takes me sometimes. Some stories will take me a week to write. Some stories will take me a month to write. And some, like Eternal Night, took me a whole year to write. And it's a lot of work. And you have to be prepared to do that work. And you have to be able to persevere. I mean, when creating characters, it's a real process. And you're not going to be able to create a great character overnight. Sometimes you'll create a character like I did with John Haynes in 1990, and he'll be a really awful character in the beginning, but then as you develop him and cultivate him, he becomes a better character, and then to the point where he becomes a very compelling character once you find the right story for him. Because when I was doing John Haynes in 1990, I didn't have the story, but then around 2004, 2005, I started to get the story for the character, and once I got that story, people found the character and they found him relatable to themselves.
Okay. Now, my next question, I have a couple more questions. My next question is, in this African American urban book market and everything, you're creating very positive characters. How are they being received as opposed to other negative characters?
Well, most of the characters that I create are usually received very positively. Now, not there is a segment of the black community that does not really like my kind of work, but usually a good chunk of it really likes my characters, my positive characters. And when people encounter them, they really like the characters. They really like the stories. A lot of people like the John Haynes character. A lot of people like the Isis character. They like the Eastine character. And I usually just go with the audience that wants to buy my products. I mean, I don't try to go to the urban street crowd with my work. So what I do is I go to those customers that want it. Now, usually I find that not only do black people buy my work, but I've had people overseas buy my work. I mean, I recently talked to a guy who was in Tahiti who had been a John Haynes fan on my last live stream. And I have a large international audience that in the UK, Germany, France, all over the world that are picking up the books on the regular, Canada. And I go with the audience that wants to buy my work. And I usually, even though I get some resistance from some Black people, I just go with those who want to support my work.
Okay. All right. So my final question is: I always give you the final word. Is there
Okay.
anything you want to say? Any shout outs? Anything you want to do? The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk a bit about the 20 SJS Direct 2020 catalog. And the final word is that, you know, I have a lot of great positive fiction that I like to share with people, a lot of great positive African American fantasy fiction. And I want to really open up that Black book market so that Black children and Black young men and women can see positive images of themselves, see images of themselves that inspire them to be their best and do their best. And the only way I can get more of these books out here is if people go out here and support the work that I do on books like John Haynes' The Man with Nothing to Lose, which is available on Amazon, and in ISIS, The Main Event, and many of the other books I talked about in the ISIS series and the John Haynes series. All in order for me to keep producing this work, I really need everybody's support. And every book that you buy and share with other people allows other people to see a positive image of Black people in fantasy and see and be able to escape to a world where they get to see other Black people and see images of Black people, which is very important because as a guy who grew up in the 80s with Cosby and Benson and many of these other positive Black people, and watching Robert Townsend and Spike Lee, I want to be able to give the next generation those type of heroes that allow them to go out here like Milestone to imagine a world where they can see a Black person in that role, and especially in a leadership role, because one of the things that I wanted to do to build on what Cosby, Robert Townsend, and the late great Dwayne McDuffie would do is try to show you Black people in power and leadership positions, like Isis being a goddess and John Haynes being a CEO, showing you Black people in power, Black people in control, and that inspires you to take power and control over your life. So those are things that I wanted to do with these type of books, and I'm hoping to try to share those books with readers so that they can see that positive image and then get inspired to do the same in their own lives.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
There's no problem. Do me a favor. Hit me back up on Messenger for a second,
All right.
and we'll wrap it up from there.
All right. Thank you for having me on the stream, and I'll let my viewers know that the stream is ending and they can, pick up my books on Amazon.com. Thank you all for coming to the stream, and we'll be there for the next stream.